The planet Zethera-7 was a world of contradictions. Its skies shimmered with hues of violet and gold, while its jagged mountains pierced through clouds that glowed faintly at night. Beneath this breathtaking beauty lay chaos, a brutal war that had raged for centuries between two alien factions, the Voron and the Xin. The Voron were towering beings encased in metallic exoskeletons, their bodies almost indestructible, forged to withstand any weapon or environment. In contrast, the Xin were sleek and graceful, their translucent skin glowing softly like living lanterns. Capable of manipulating energy fields to devastating effect, humans had stumbled upon Zethera-7 by accident decades ago when one of Earth's deep space probes malfunctioned and veered off course. At first, humanity's presence on the planet was minimal, just a small research outpost established to study the unique flora and fauna. But over time, word spread among the galaxy's more powerful civilizations about the humans' arrival. To species like the Voron and the Xin, these fragile bipeds were little more than curiosity's weaklings who couldn't even breathe Zethera's thin atmosphere without assistance. They were tolerated but largely ignored, dismissed as irrelevant bystanders in a conflict too vast for them to comprehend. This perception changed briefly when a human mining crew discovered something extraordinary buried beneath the planet's surface, an ancient artifact pulsating with unknown energy. Both the Voron and the Xin coveted it, believing it held secrets to turning the tide of their endless war. When the humans refused to hand it over, citing ethical concerns, they became targets. Attacks on the outpost grew frequent, forcing the researchers to abandon their work and retreat into hiding. Humanity's reputation plummeted further. Now, they weren't just weak, they were cowards. One fateful evening, amidst the chaos of battle, an unlikely event unfolded. A lone human scavenger named Elias Kane wandered far from the safety of the outpost, searching for salvageable parts to repair his damaged rover. Elias wasn't a soldier or a scientist, he was just a mechanic trying to survive in a hostile world. As he crept along the edge of a ravine, the sounds of combat reached him. Explosions, crackling energy blasts, and guttural roars. Peering cautiously over the ridge, he saw a scene unlike anything he'd ever witnessed. A single Xin warrior stood defiant against a squad of Voron soldiers. She moved with fluid grace, her body radiating a pale blue light that illuminated the battlefield. Her long, flowing tendrils whipped around her like ethereal ribbons, deflecting attacks with precise movements. Yet despite her skill, she was outnumbered. One by one, the Voron closed in, their weapons leaving scorched craters where she once stood. It was only a matter of time before they overwhelmed her. Elias froze, torn between instinctive fear and an inexplicable urge to help. He knew better than to get involved. The last thing he wanted was to become collateral damage in someone else's war. But there was something about the way the Xin warrior fought, not just with strength, but with resolve that struck a chord within him. She wasn't fighting to win. She was fighting to protect something or someone. As the Voron prepared their final assault, Elias made a split-second decision. Grabbing a makeshift EMP device from his PACA, tool designed to disable rogue drones, he activated it and hurled it toward the battlefield. The device emitted a high-pitched whine before erupting in a burst of electromagnetic energy. The Voron's armor systems faltered momentarily, giving the Xin warrior the opening she needed. With a final surge of power, she unleashed a concentrated beam of energy that scattered her attackers, sending them retreating into the shadows. Breathing heavily, the warrior turned to face her unexpected savior. Her glowing eyes locked onto Elias, who stood trembling on the ridge above. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, slowly, she raised a hand, not in aggression, but in what seemed like gratitude. Before Elias could respond, she collapsed to her knees, her luminous form flickering weakly. It was then that Elias noticed the severity of her injuries. Her translucent skin bore cracks and burns, evidence of the toll the battle had taken. Despite her earlier defiance, she was gravely wounded, completely vulnerable. Against all logic, Elias climbed down from the ridge and approached her cautiously. "You're hurt," he said softly, though he doubted she understood him. Her response came not in words but in actions. Reaching out with trembling fingers, she touched his chest, right above his heart. A low hum resonated from her, almost like a question. Elias didn't know what she meant, but one thing was clear. She needed help, and he was the only one there to give it. Little did Elias realize that this moment would set into motion events far greater than himself. By saving the life of this mysterious warrior, he had unknowingly stepped onto a path that would change not only his destiny but the fate of Zithera 7 itself. And as he hoisted her limp form onto his shoulders and began the perilous journey back to the outpost, he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just asking for aid. She was offering him a chance to prove humanity's worth in ways no one had ever imagined. The question lingered in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. What would happen when the galaxy learned that even the smallest acts of courage could alter the course of history? Elias Kane trudged through the dense underbrush of Zithera 7, his arms straining under the weight of the injured Zin warrior. Her body was surprisingly light, but her fragility unnerved him. Every step felt like a gamble. Would she survive long enough for him to get her back to the outpost? And even if he succeeded, what then? The outpost's medical supplies were rudimentary at best, designed for humans, not alien physiology. Still, Elias pressed on, driven by a stubborn determination that surprised even himself. The journey wasn't easy. The forest around them seemed alive with hostility. Strange creatures scuttled in the shadows, their glowing eyes tracking his every move. Occasionally, a low growl would echo from the darkness, and Elias tightened his grip on the makeshift EMP device slung across his shoulder. He had no illusions about defending himself against predators or worse. Another Vorin patrol, but he refused to abandon the warrior, who had fought so fiercely just moments ago as they neared the edge of the ravine where the battle had taken place. The Zin stirred weakly in his arms. Her glowing tendrils flickered faintly, casting an eerie blue light over the ground below. She let out a soft hum, almost like a sigh, and Elias glanced down at her. "Hang in there," he murmured, unsure whether she could understand him. "I'm not much, but I'll do what I can." When they finally reached the outpost, Elias wasted no time. He laid the Zin warrior gently on a cot inside the infirmary and began rummaging through the limited supplies. Bandages, antiseptics, painkillers, all human tools that might be useless on her alien biology. Frustration bubbled up inside him as he realized how ill-equipped he was to help her. Yet something deep within urged him to try anyway. Maybe it was pity, or maybe it was curiosity. Whatever it was, Elias couldn't bring himself to walk away. Hours passed as Elias worked tirelessly, improvising solutions with whatever materials he could find. At one point, he rigged a crude cooling system using spare parts from the rover, hoping to stabilize her temperature. Another time, he mixed a gel-like substance from plant extracts native to Zithera 7, applying it carefully to her wounds. Each action was guided more by instinct than knowledge, but slowly, the Zin warrior began to stabilize. Her breathing grew steadier, and the flickering glow of her skin became less erratic. It was during these tense hours that the first real interaction occurred. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold, the Zin opened her eyes fully for the first time since the battle. Her gaze locked onto Elias, sharp and assessing. For a moment, neither moved. Then, in a voice that resonated like a melody, she spoke not in words but in tones and vibrations. That seemed to bypass language entirely. It was both beautiful and disorienting, like hearing music underwater. Elias blinked, startled. Hi?" he said awkwardly, raising a hand in greeting. The gesture must have conveyed some meaning because the Zin tilted her head slightly, her expression softening. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against his wrist. A jolt of warmth shot through him, accompanied by a flood of flashes of stars, battles, and strange landscapes. It was overwhelming, yet strangely intimate, as though she were sharing fragments of her soul. "Whoa," Elias whispered, pulling back instinctively. What was that?" The Zin didn't respond directly, but her glowing tendrils shifted rhythmically, almost like a shrug. It dawned on Elias that this might be her way of communicating, a kind of telepathic exchange. While he couldn't fully comprehend it, the connection was undeniable. She wasn't just thanking him. She was trying to convey something deeper, something urgent. Over the next few days, their bond grew stronger. Through trial and error, Elias learned to interpret her nonverbal cues. When she needed water, her tendrils would shimmer brightly. When she was in pain, they dimmed and curled inward. In return, Elias shared bits of his own life stories of Earth, photos stored on his tablet, and even snippets of music from his favorite bands. Though she couldn't replicate the sounds, her eyes sparkled with fascination whenever he played a song, as though she'd never encountered such a concept before. But not everyone at the outpost welcomed the Zen warrior's presence. Word of Elias's actions spread quickly among the remaining humans, sparking heated debates. Some argued that harboring an alien combatant, even one injured and vulnerable, was reckless. Others feared retaliation from the Vorin, who might see this act of kindness as an act of war. "You don't know what you're getting us into," snapped Dr. Mara Chun, the outpost's lead scientist, during one particularly tense meeting. "She's not just some stray animal you picked up off the street, Elias. She's part of a conflict we can't begin to understand." And I left. "Her there to die?" Elias shot back, his voice rising. "Is that who we are now? Too scared to help anyone unless it benefits us?" Dr. Chun sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's not about being scared, it's about survival. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and barely holding on as it is. Bringing her here doesn't make us heroes, it makes us targets." Despite the backlash, Elias refused to back down. With each passing day, he grew more convinced that helping the Zen was the right thing to do, not just for her sake, but for humanity's. If they wanted to prove their worth in this galaxy, they had to start somewhere. And if saving a single life was all it took to change perceptions, then so be it. Little did Elias realize that his decision would soon force him to confront far greater challenges than angry colleagues or resource shortages. The Zen warrior's recovery brought new revelations about her people, the artifact buried beneath the Thera 7, and the true nature of the war raging across the planet. But perhaps most importantly, it forced humanity to ask itself a fundamental question. What does it mean to truly stand up for someone else, even when the odds seem insurmountable? As the sun set once again over the alien landscape, Elias sat beside the Zen warrior, watching her tendrils sway gently in the cool evening breeze. For the first time in weeks, she looked peaceful, almost serene. Yet deep within those glowing eyes, Elias sensed a storm brewing, a storm that would test not only his courage but the very essence of what it meant to be human. The days that followed were a delicate balance of hope and tension. The Zen warrior, whom Elias had begun referring to as Lyra, after misinterpreting one of her melodic hums, was recovering steadily, but the atmosphere at the outpost grew increasingly strained. Word of her presence spread beyond the confines of the research station, carried by scavengers and traders who frequented Zethera 7's desolate regions. Whispers of a human aiding an enemy combatant reached ears both friendly and hostile. Dr. Mara Chun continued to voice her concerns, though she softened her tone in private conversations with Elias. "I'm not saying you did the wrong thing," she admitted one evening while monitoring Lyra's vitals. We need to think about the bigger picture. Helping her might have consequences none of us are prepared for." Elias nodded reluctantly, his gaze fixed on Lyra. She was sitting cross-legged on the cot now, her tendrils glowing softly as she examined a small holographic display Elias had shown her earlier. It depicted Earth's continents, oceans, and cities, a glimpse into humanity's homeworld. Though she couldn't speak in words, her fascination was evident in the way her tendrils danced rhythmically, almost like applause. "I know it's risky," Elias replied quietly, "but if we don't take risks, we'll always be seen as irrelevant bystanders. Maybe this is our chance to show her, that we're more than just cowards hiding in the shadows." Mara sighed, shaking her head. "You're idealistic, Elias. I admire that. But ideals won't protect us when the Vorin come knocking." As if on cue, the distant rumble of engines shattered the quietude of the outpost. Everyone froze, their eyes darting toward the reinforced windows. A convoy of Vorin war machines emerged from the horizon, their metallic frames gleaming ominously under the dim sunlight. They weren't attacking, not yet, but the message was clear. They were searching for something. Or someone. Panic rippled through the outpost. Some suggested handing Lyra over immediately, hoping to avoid bloodshed. Others argued that doing so would betray everything they stood for as humans. Amidst the chaos, Elias remained resolute. "We saved her life," he said firmly during an emergency meeting. "If we give her up now, what does that say about us? That we'll abandon anyone who trusts us?" His words struck a chord, but they didn't silence the dissent entirely. The group was divided, torn between fear and principle. In the end, a compromise was reached. They would hide Lyra deeper within the outpost, in a secure chamber shielded by layers of electromagnetic interference. It wasn't foolproof, but it was the best they could do under the circumstances. What no one anticipated was how Lyra herself would respond to the threat. When Elias explained the situation to her using gestures and fragmented images, her reaction was unexpected. Instead of retreating further into vulnerability, she stood tall as her slender frame allowed, and gestured emphatically toward the window. Her tendrils pulsed with intensity, radiating a fierce determination that left no room for misunderstanding. She wanted to fight back. "Absolutely not," Elias said firmly, crossing his arms. "You're still healing. You can't take on an entire squad of Voran soldiers." Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. Then, with deliberate movements, she touched her chest, then pointed at Elias and finally traced a line connecting them both. The meaning was unmistakable. She saw him as part of her team now. Together they faced whatever came next. Though reluctant, Elias couldn't deny the logic behind her stance. If the Voran breached the outpost, hiding wouldn't save them. They needed a plan, one that combined human ingenuity with Lyra's unique abilities. And so, against all odds, a strategy began to take shape. Using salvaged materials, Elias and a small group of engineers constructed a series of traps designed to exploit the Voran's reliance on advanced technology. EMP devices rigged to trigger remotely lined key entry points. Decoy signals mimicked human activity in areas far from the actual hiding spots. Meanwhile, Lyra contributed in ways only she could. With her telepathic link to Elias growing stronger, she guided him in setting up energy barriers powered by the outpost's limited reserves. Her knowledge of the Voran's tactics proved invaluable. Even though communication remained rudimentary, the first test of their preparations came sooner than expected. Late one night, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. Outside the hidden chamber, the Voran had found them, or at least they thought they had. Through a crack in the wall, Elias watched as two armored figures entered the main lab, their weapons scanning for signs of life. Beside him, Lyra tensed, her tendrils flickering erratically. Elias placed a calming hand on her shoulder, silently, reminding her to wait for the signal. Moments later, one of the Voran activated a holographic interface, triggering a cascade of alarms. It was exactly what Elias had hoped for. With a swift motion, he activated the EMP trap, plunging the room into darkness. Chaos erupted. The Voran stumbled blindly, their systems temporarily disabled. From the shadows, Lyra moved like liquid light, her tendrils lashing out with precision. She didn't kill, her strikes focused on incapacitating rather than destroying. Elias followed close behind, wielding a makeshift weapon crafted from scrap metal. Together they drove the intruders back, forcing them to retreat. When the dust settled, the outpost was safe for now. Exhausted but triumphant, Elias leaned against a wall, catching his breath. Lyra approached him, her glow steady once more. She placed a hand on his chest again, the same gesture she'd made when they first met. This time, however, the sensation was different. Instead of overwhelming flashes of imagery, Elias felt a single, clear message resonate in his mind: gratitude. For the first time, Elias truly understood why Lyra had fought so fiercely in the ravine. Like him, she wasn't fighting just to survive. She was fighting for something greater. Whether it was her people, her planet, or perhaps even the fragile bond forming between them, She carried a purpose that transcended fear. As dawn broke over Zithera 7, casting golden light across the battered outpost, Elias realized something profound. Humanity's strength didn't lie in its weapons or technology, it lay in its capacity to adapt, to connect, and to persevere. And maybe, just maybe, those qualities were enough to earn respect in a galaxy that had long underestimated them, but the victory was fleeting. The Vorin wouldn't stop until they found what they were looking for. And as Elias stared at the ancient artifact stored securely in the outpost vault, the very object that had sparked this conflict, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was only beginning. The victory over the Vorin intruders was short-lived. Though the outpost had been defended successfully, the encounter left everyone shaken. The Vorin weren't just soldiers, they were relentless hunters, driven by a singular purpose. And now, thanks to their failed raid, they knew exactly where to find the humans and the Zin warrior. Elias sat in the dimly lit control room of the outpost, staring at the surveillance feeds showing the barren landscape outside. The Vorin convoy hadn't retreated far. Instead, it had regrouped near the edge of the forest, its machines humming ominously as if waiting for reinforcements. It was only a matter of time before they launched another assault, and next time, they wouldn't underestimate their opponents. Lyra stood nearby, her glowing tendrils pulsing faintly as she studied the monitors alongside him. Over the past few days, her recovery had accelerated, her strength returning with each passing hour. Yet, despite her growing resilience, Elias couldn't ignore the toll this conflict was taking on her. Her movements carried an unspoken weariness, as though the weight of centuries-old battles rested on her shoulders. He wanted to ask what burden she carried, but how could he, when words between them remained so elusive? "We can't keep defending like this," Dr. Chun said suddenly, breaking the silence. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Every attack weakens us further. We're running out of resources, and sooner or later we'll run out of luck." Elias turned to face her, his expression grim. "What do you suggest? Surrender?" "No," Mara replied sharply. "But we need to think beyond barricades and traps. If we don't change the game entirely, we're finished." Her words struck a nerve, not because they were wrong, but because Elias knew she was right. They couldn't win through brute force alone. Humans didn't possess the advanced weaponry or physical prowess of either the Vorin or the Zin. Their advantage lay elsewhere in creativity, adaptability, and sheer determination. But how could those traits be harnessed effectively against such overwhelming odds? As if sensing his turmoil, Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on his arm. Her touch sent a ripple of warmth through him, accompanied once again by fragments of thought, not coherent images this time, but emotions, resolve, urgency, trust. Whatever message she was trying to convey, it was clear she believed in humanity's potential. That belief gave Elias an idea, one that might shift the balance of power. "Mara," he said slowly, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside him. "What if we use the artifact?" Dr. Chin blinked, caught off guard. "The artifact? You mean the one buried under the planet's surface? Are you insane? We have no idea what it does or what kind of destruction it could unleash." No," Elias admitted. "But think about it. Both the Vorin and the Zin want it desperately. Why else would they risk everything to get it? What if it holds the key to ending this war not just here, but everywhere?" Mara frowned, clearly torn. "Even if we could activate it, which we can't, it's too dangerous. We'd be playing with forces beyond our understanding. And doing nothing is any safer?" Elias countered. "We're already caught in the crossfire. At least this way, we have a chance to take control of the situation." Lyra nodded emphatically, her tendrils flaring brightly in agreement. Whether she understood the full implications of Elias's plan or simply trusted him completely, her support bolstered his resolve. Together they approached Dr. Chun, laying out their proposal. The plan was audacious, even reckless. Using the outpost's remaining equipment, they would attempt to interface the artifact with the energy barriers Lyra had helped construct. If successful, The combined output could create a massive EMP pulse powerful enough to disable every piece of Voron technology within range. It wouldn't destroy them outright, but it would cripple their ability to fight, buying humanity and the Zin precious time to negotiate or escape. Of course, there were risks. Activating the artifact required energy levels far beyond what the outpost's generators could sustain. Overloading the system could result in catastrophic failure not just for the outpost, but possibly for the entire region. Still, faced with annihilation, the group decided it was a gamble worth taking. Preparations began immediately. Engineers worked tirelessly to modify the artifact's containment unit, while others rerouted power from non-essential systems to the generator core. Lyra played a crucial role, her telepathic link with Elias allowing her to guide them through complex adjustments neither side fully understood individually. As the hours passed, the tension grew palpable, punctuated only by brief moments of quiet camaraderie. Finally, the moment arrived. The Voron convoy had begun moving again, advancing steadily toward the outpost. From the control room, Elias watched grimly as their machines loomed closer, casting long shadows across the desolate terrain. Beside him, Lyra stood ready, her tendrils shimmering with anticipation. On the other side of the room, Dr. Chun monitored the energy readings, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the final settings. "All systems are go," Mara announced, her voice tight with anxiety. "Once we trigger the pulse, we'll have less than 30 seconds to evacuate the control room. After that..." She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. If the overload occurred, anyone left behind would be vaporized instantly. Elias took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Let's do this." With a nod from Lyra, he pressed the activation sequence. The artifact hummed to life, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. Energy surged through the system, causing the lights in the outpost to flicker violently. Outside, the Voron convoy halted abruptly, their sensors detecting the sudden spike in power. For a fleeting moment, uncertainty rippled through their ranks, a rare glimpse of hesitation, then with a deafening roar, the EMP pulse erupted. A wave of electromagnetic energy swept outward, engulfing the battlefield in a blinding flash. When the light faded, the Voron machines lay motionless, their once imposing frames reduced to useless husks. Cheers erupted from the humans gathered. In the control room, relief washing over them like a tidal wave, but the victory came at a cost. The generator core was destabilizing rapidly, its casing cracking under the strain. Alarms blared loudly as sparks flew from the console. "Evacuate!" Mara shouted, pushing everyone toward the exit. Elias hesitated. Glancing back at Lyra, she shook her head firmly, gesturing for him to leave. Understanding dawned on him she intended to stay behind to ensure the artifact remained secure. Panic surged within him, but before he could protest, she placed a hand on his chest one last time. This time, the connection was unmistakable: gratitude, trust, and something deeper. Goodbye. Tears stung his eyes as he turned and ran, joining the others as they fled the collapsing control room. Behind him, the generator exploded in a brilliant burst of light, sealing the artifact away forever. When Elias emerged into the open air, the sight that greeted him was transformative. The Voron forces were retreating, their technological advantage shattered. More importantly, the surviving Zin warriors who had arrived to aid their comrade now regarded the humans with newfound respect. No longer were they seen as weak or irrelevant, they were allies worthy of admiration. As Elias looked back at the smoldering ruins of the outpost, he felt a pang of loss. But he also felt hope. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with beings far more advanced. In doing so, they had changed not just the course of this battle, but perhaps the destiny of Zethera-7 itself. The aftermath of the MP pulse left the outpost in ruins, its walls scorched and its systems reduced to smoldering wreckage. Yet, amidst the destruction, a profound shift had occurred not just in the battlefield but in the hearts and minds of those who witnessed it. The Voron forces, stripped of their technological superiority, retreated into the horizon, their once dominant presence diminished to a distant rumble of vengeance. For the first time in centuries, the balance of power on Zidira 7 seemed uncertain. Elias stood at the edge of the crater where the control room had once been, his face streaked with soot and his body trembling from exhaustion. The weight of what had transpired pressed heavily on him. He had saved lives, human and alien alike, but he had also lost something irreplaceable. Lyra's sacrifice weighed on him like an anchor, her final gesture of trust lingering in his mind. Her tendrils glow, her melodic hums, the telepathic connection that had bridged their worlds, all of it was gone, buried beneath the rubble. Yet, even as grief threatened to consume him, Elias couldn't deny the significance of what they had achieved. The artifact, now sealed away by the explosion, was no longer a prize for either side to claim. Its secrets would remain hidden, perhaps forever. More importantly, humanity's actions had forced both the Vorin and the Zin to reconsider their assumptions about these fragile bipeds from Earth. No longer were humans seen as irrelevant bystanders. They were now recognized as capable of shaping events in ways neither faction had anticipated. The surviving members of the outpost gathered around Elias, their expressions a mix of relief and sorrow. Dr. Mara Chun approached cautiously, her usual stern demeanor softened by the gravity of the moment. "We did it," she said quietly, though her voice carried a note of disbelief. "Against all odds, we actually pulled it off." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yeah, we did, but at what cost?" Mara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she followed his line of sight, watching as the remnants of the Vorin convoy disappeared into the distance. Beyond them, the glowing forms of Zin warriors moved silently across the landscape, their luminous bodies casting faint light over the desolate terrain. They hadn't attacked the humans after the EMP pulse, they had simply observed, their expressions unreadable but undeniably thoughtful. "They're still out there," Mara murmured, nodding toward the Zin. "What happens now? Do we wait for them to make the next move?" Elias shook his head. "No, we can't afford to be passive anymore. If we want to survive and if we want to honor Lyra's sacrifice, we need to take the initiative." His words sparked a renewed sense of purpose among the group. Though battered and weary, they began working together to salvage what remained of the outpost. Supplies were rationed, equipment was repaired, and defenses were hastily rebuilt. But this time, their efforts weren't driven solely by fear or survival instinct. There was a newfound determination, a recognition that humanity's place in the galaxy wasn't predetermined. It was something they could shape through courage, ingenuity, and unity. As the days passed, the Zin warriors continued to linger nearby, their presence both a comfort and a mystery. They made no hostile moves, nor did they attempt to communicate directly with the humans. Instead, they seemed content to observe, their glowing eyes filled with an unspoken curiosity. It was clear that Lyra's bond with Elias had left a lasting impression on them. Though the full extent of her influence remained unclear, one evening, as the sun dipped below the jagged mountains, casting long shadows across the outpost, Elias ventured beyond the perimeter alone. He needed space to think, to process everything that had happened. As he walked, he found himself drawn to the ravine where he had first encountered Lyra, the site of the brutal battle that had changed his life. Standing on the ridge, he gazed down at the scorched earth below, memories flooding back with startling clarity. "You miss her." The voice startled him, though not because it was unexpected. Turning, he saw one of the Zin warriors standing a few paces away, her translucent skin shimmering softly in the fading light. She was taller than Lyra, her form more angular, but there was a familiarity in her gaze, an echo of the connection Elias had shared with Lyra. "Yes," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I do." The Zin tilted her head slightly, her tendrils swaying gently. Then, without warning, she extended a hand, palm upward. A faint glow emanated from her fingertips, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Elias hesitated before stepping closer, placing his own hand cautiously over hers. The sensation was immediate warmth spread through him, accompanied by flashes of imagery, stars swirling in endless galaxies, battles fought and lost. And finally, Lyra herself, her form radiant and whole. "She is not gone," the Zin said, her tone resonant and melodic. "Her spirit lives within you and within us." Elias blinked, tears welling in his eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your actions have awakened something in my people," she replied. "For too long we have allowed our war to define us. Your bravery has shown us another pathway to honor those we have lost without perpetuating the cycle of destruction." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He realized then that Lyra's sacrifice had done more than protect the humans. It had planted a seed of hope in the hearts of the Zin. Perhaps, just perhaps, peace was possible after all, but the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Even as the Zin warrior withdrew her hand, her expression grew somber. "The Vorin will return," she warned. "They will not accept defeat easily. When they come, you must be ready." Elias nodded, steeling himself for the challenges to come. "We will be." Returning to the outpost, he relayed the Zin's message to the others. Though the news of the impending threat cast a shadow over their fragile optimism, it also galvanized them further. Plans were made to fortify their position, to prepare for whatever the Vorin might throw at them next. But more importantly, they began reaching out to the Zin, forging tentative alliances based on mutual respect and shared goals. As the nights grew colder and the winds howled across the barren plains, Elias found solace in the knowledge that humanity's role in this conflict was no longer passive. They had proven themselves capable of standing alongside beings far more advanced, and in doing so, they had earned a seat at the table. The galaxy was vast and unforgiving, but within its infinite expanse, humanity had carved out a small yet significant place for itself. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of Zethera 7, Lyra's light continued to shine not as a memory, but as a beacon guiding them forward. The days turned into weeks as humanity and the Zin worked side by side, forging an alliance born from necessity but strengthened by trust. The outpost, though battered, became a symbol of resilience, a testament to what could be achieved when two vastly different species chose cooperation over conflict. For Elias Kane, this new reality was both exhilarating and humbling. Every interaction with the Zin deepened his understanding of their culture, their struggles, and their hopes for peace. But it also reminded him of the void left by Lyra's sacrifice, a loss that still lingered in the quiet moments between battles. The Vorin, true to the Zin warrior's warning, did not stay away for long. Their return came not as a single strike, but as a series of calculated assaults designed to test the humans' resolve. Each attack pushed the outpost's defenses to their limits, forcing Elias and his companions to adapt quickly. Yet even as the pressure mounted, something remarkable began to emerge: unity. Humans and Zin fought shoulder to shoulder, their combined strengths creating a synergy neither side could have achieved alone. One particular skirmish stood out among the rest. It occurred during a fierce sandstorm that swept across Zethera 7's surface, reducing visibility to near zero. The Vorin used the chaos to launch a surprise assault, deploying drones equipped with sonic weapons capable of disorienting both human and Zin alike. Panic spread through the outpost as the defenders struggled to counter the relentless barrage. Elias found himself pinned down behind a makeshift barricade, clutching his ears against the deafening wail of the sonic waves. Beside him, a young engineer named Priya Patel crouched low, her face pale with fear. "We can't hold them off like this," she shouted over the din. "They'll overwhelm us." Elias gritted his teeth, searching desperately for a solution. Then inspiration struck. Turning to the nearest Zin warrior, a live female with tendrils glowing faintly despite the storm, he gestured urgently toward the outpost's damaged communication array. Using hand signals and fragments of shared imagery, he conveyed his plan: reroute the array's residual energy to create a feedback loop that would disrupt the drone's frequencies. The Zin tilted her head, processing the idea before nodding sharply. Together, Elias and the warrior sprinted through the storm, dodging blasts of sound and debris. Reaching the array, they worked in tandem, their movements synchronized despite the language barrier. Elias handled the mechanical adjustments while The Xin manipulated the energy fields, her tendrils weaving intricate patterns in the air. Within minutes, the array roared to life, emitting a high-pitched frequency that clashed violently with the drone's own signals. One by one, the machines faltered, their systems overloaded by the interference. As the sonic assault subsided, cheers erupted from the outpost's defenders. The Voran forces, caught off guard by the sudden reversal, retreated once more into the storm. Though the victory was temporary, it marked a turning point in the conflict, one defined not by brute force but by ingenuity and collaboration. In the aftermath of the battle, the bond between humans and Xin grew stronger than ever. They celebrated their success together, sharing food, stories, and laughter under the stars. For the first time since arriving on Zethera 7, Elias felt a sense of belonging, not just to the outpost or to humanity, but to something greater. He realized then that Lyra's legacy wasn't just about sacrifice. It was about connection. She had bridged worlds, proving that differences didn't have to divide, they could unite. But the most transformative moment came unexpectedly during a quiet evening gathering. The Xin leader, the tall, angular warrior who had spoken to Elias, at the ravine approached him with deliberate steps. Her presence commanded attention, yet there was a gentleness in her demeanor that put him at ease. Extending her hand, she placed a small object into his palm, a shard of crystalline material, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the firelight. This belonged to her, the Xin said, her melodic voice carrying a weight of reverence. She entrusted it to us before joining you in battle. Now we entrust it to you. Elias stared at the shard, his throat tightening with emotion. He recognized it instantly. It was a fragment of the artifact, salvaged from the ruins of the control room. Somehow, Lyra had ensured its survival, even as she gave her life to protect it. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a relic of alien technology. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that the choices made in the heat of conflict could ripple outward, shaping destinies far beyond their immediate scope. The Xin leader continued, her glowing eyes locking onto his. Your people have shown U.S. courage, creativity, and compassion qualities we thought lost to the galaxy. Because of you, we believe peace is possible. And because of her, we know it is worth fighting for. Her words resonated deeply, igniting a spark within Elias that burned brighter than any star. In that moment, he understood the true power of humanity's role in this galactic theater. It wasn't about dominating others or proving superiority. It was about inspiring change through action, empathy, and perseverance. The shard in his hand represented not just Lyra's sacrifice, but humanity's potential to shape the future. When the Xin leader withdrew, leaving Elias to contemplate the gift, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The war wasn't over. The Voran would undoubtedly return, their determination unwavering. But now, humanity faced those challenges not as bystanders or victims, but as equals. They had earned their place alongside the Xin, standing united against a common foe. As he held the shard aloft, its light reflecting off the faces of those gathered around the fire, Elias knew that the tide had shifted irrevocably. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again, and perhaps neither would humanity itself. In the vast expanse of space, where countless civilizations rose and fell, one truth remained undeniable. Even the smallest acts of bravery could alter the course of history. And on Zethera 7, amidst the ruins of war and the promise of peace, humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming something extraordinary. The final battle came on a day when the skies of Zethera 7 were eerily calm. After weeks of skirmishes and escalating tensions, the Voran launched their most formidable assault yet. Their forces descended upon the outpost in overwhelming numbers, their metallic frames gleaming ominously under the pale sunlight. This time there would be no retreat, no hesitation. The Voran had come to reclaim what they believed was theirs, and nothing short of total victory would satisfy them. Elias stood at the forefront of the human-Xin alliance, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and resolve. Around him, the defenders prepared for the inevitable clash, their faces etched with determination. The outpost's walls bristled with makeshift defenses, energy barriers powered by salvage tech, EMP traps rigged to neutralize enemy systems, and even sonic disruptors adapted from the previous battle. Yet despite these preparations, everyone knew the odds were stacked against them. As the first wave of Voran soldiers advanced, Elias clutched the crystalline shard Lyra had entrusted to him. Its faint glow pulsed rhythmically, as if alive, reminding him of the sacrifices made and the hope that remained. He glanced at the Xin warriors standing beside him, their luminous forms casting an ethereal light over the battlefield. Together, they formed an unbreakable line, a testament to unity forged through adversity. The battle raged with ferocity unmatched by any before it. Explosions lit up the horizon, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Energy beams crisscrossed the air, leaving trails of smoke and fire in their wake. Despite the chaos, humanity and the Xin fought as one, their movements synchronized in ways that defied logic. Humans used their ingenuity to outmaneuver the Voran's brute strength, while the Xin countered with precision and grace. It was a symphony of resistance, a dance between species united by purpose. At the height of the conflict, Elias found himself face to face with a towering Voran commander, its exoskeleton scarred from countless battles. The creature loomed over him, its mechanical limbs whirring menacingly. For a moment Elias froze, his mind racing with doubt. Could he truly stand against such power? Then something extraordinary happened. The shard in his hand flared brightly, its light cutting through the haze of war like a beacon. The Voran commander hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing in confusion. Taking advantage of the distraction, Elias hurled the shard toward the machine with all his might. As it struck the Voran's chest plate, a surge of energy erupted, engulfing the commander in a blinding flash. When the light faded, the once imposing figure collapsed, its systems irreparably damaged. The tide of the battle shifted instantly. Inspired by Elias's act of defiance, the humans in alliance pressed forward with renewed vigor. The Voran forces, thrown into disarray by the loss of their leader, began to falter. One by one, their ranks broke, until finally they retreated entirely, disappearing into the distance like shadows fleeing the dawn. When the dust settled, silence fell over the battlefield. Exhausted but victorious, the defenders gathered amidst the wreckage, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. They had done the impossible. They had stood toe-to-toe with a superior force and emerged triumphant. But more importantly, they had proven that cooperation could overcome division, that courage could triumph over fear. Elias walked slowly back to the outpost, his body aching but his spirit buoyed by the weight of what they had achieved. As he entered the main hall, now battered, but still standing, he was met by the Xin leader who had given him the shard. Her tendrils shimmered softly as she approached, her gaze filled with gratitude and respect. "You have changed us," she said, simply, her melodic voice resonating deeply. "Because of you and because of her we see a future worth fighting for." Elias nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Lyra started this, we just finished it." The Xin leader placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. Then, without another word, she turned and joined her fellow warriors, who were already beginning the process of healing and rebuilding. The bond between humans and Xin had been forged in fire, but it would endure long after the scars of war faded. In the days that followed, peace talks began between the Xin and the remnants of the Voran forces. Though tensions remained high, the shared experience of facing humanity's resilience had planted seeds of understanding. Slowly but surely, the centuries-old conflict began to transform not into submission, but into dialogue. For Elias, life on Zethera 7 took on new meaning. The outpost became a hub of collaboration, where humans and aliens worked together to restore balance to the planet. Stories of their bravery spread across the galaxy, inspiring other civilizations to reconsider their perceptions of humanity. No longer were they seen as fragile or irrelevant. They were recognized as catalysts for change, beings capable of bridging divides and forging connections in even the darkest of times. One evening, as Elias sat alone atop a ridge overlooking the ravine where he had first saved Lyra, he held the shard in his hand once more. Its light glimmered faintly, a reminder of the legacy she had left behind. Closing his eyes, he felt her presence, and not as a memory, but as a guiding force urging him to continue the work they had started. "We did it, Lyra," he whispered into the wind. "You showed us the way, and we followed, thank you." As the stars emerged above the jagged mountains, casting their soft glow over the alien landscape, Elias realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology, its weapons, or even its resilience. It was in its ability to adapt, connect, and inspire. On Zethera 7, they had proven that even the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, shaping destinies far beyond their own. And so, under the watchful eyes of distant suns, a new chapter began, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy itself. In the end, it wasn't about dominance or survival. It was about finding common ground, about proving that even in the vastness of space, no one was ever truly alone. The universe was vast, yes, but within its infinite expanse, humanity had carved out a place not just for themselves, but for others as well. And as Elias gazed up at the heavens, he smiled, knowing that somewhere, Lyra's light still shone brightly, guiding them all toward a brighter future.